Hey there. Here's a little content warning for this episode. We are talking about body image, body perception. There's mention of sexual abuse and trauma, as well as diet culture and eating disorders. If you're not in the right place to listen to these topics, then either skip this one or listen to it with someone whom you can talk about this. Let's get started. Hey community, before we get into this new month, which will be fully under the light of Matrescence, we wanted to let you know that during the summer, we reached two goals that Eva and I had set for ourselves for this podcast. We surpassed the 500 followers on all the podcast platforms combined and over 10,000 downloads of our episodes. I mean, this is pretty amazing. And this is where you can come in again to help us out. We have high hopes for the rest of the year and we want to hit 1,000 followers and 15,000 downloads by the end of the year. This means we have 4 full months left on our hands to achieve this goal. And how can you support us? You can help us by sharing your favorite episodes with your community, making sure you subscribe on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram under Damn Parenting Podcast, and make sure that you give us a rating on any podcast platform that you subscribe. Make sure that the word is spread within your community. And if you have enjoyed any of the topics we've covered in over our 100 episodes, go and hit the 5-star rating and comment if you can. Get on YouTube and hit the subscribe button and share. Make sure that we get into the conversation of your WhatsApp groups, your Facebook groups, the events that you're at, or with any casual conversation you're having with another parent. Thank you so much for all the support that you've given us so far. And we aim to continue our mission on shedding light on the Dutch medical system, the parenting journey we all go through, talking about the hidden awkward topics many refuse to do, and give voice to our community so you know where you can get information and helpful tips. Thank you so much for your support, and let's jump right into the next helpful episode.
Hello and welcome back to Damn Parenting, your English-speaking parenting podcast from Amsterdam, the Netherlands. As always, we are your hosts, Eva and
Maren.
And we are in the month of Matrescence, where we're going to be talking about everything we can really about Matrescence. And today's special episode is actually about body image, because this is actually going to be quite an impactful episode. And we have Ilena Standring with us. And this is actually, how do we put it? This is a part we took out of a previous episode Ilena joined us on, which was episode 34, Matrescence with Ilena Standring, back in April. We had such an amazing chat with Ilena, but it was turning into a 24-hour session chat that it was just, I don't know. Maren had to edit this out, and it just got to the stage that she just said, you know what? This topic of body image in Matrescence is actually such a pivotal and key discussion to have. We really need to focus solely on that topic on its own. And that's what we're doing today. The reason we're doing this is because I think it's 54% of women in the UK that were researched in the Mental Health Foundation. They found that once you've had a baby, you had a negative relationship with your body. And that's compared to people who haven't been pregnant. And only 14% actually had a more positive relationship. Maren, how do you feel about those figures?
I am surprised and not surprised. I mean, 14% is still good.
I'm surprised with 14. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh, okay. That's actually pretty decent, I'd say. But yeah, I'm obviously not surprised with the rest, who has a hard time realizing that things have changed, bodies have changed, minds are changing. I mean, the whole process, and this is one part of matrescence, which we can't just bracket out, body image or your physical appearance, the process that you're going through obviously is there, but at the same time we try to put it under the rug, not talk about it, feel bad about it, try to rigidly change it. So I think it's like this elephant in the room where we all want to address it, but at the same time we also know we're not talking about bodies. And so it's like this whole weird energy sometimes, I feel, where we do all want to address it and we do all want to talk about it, not only to share our thoughts on it. At the same time, we have learned that we don't talk about it. So it's like this weird energy. Yeah. But at the same time, I do feel I want to open the conversation. And if you out there, listener, don't feel comfortable talking about it, maybe you can just listen to us and know that we will take the stage and we will talk about it with our experiences, and maybe there is something that you feel familiar with and maybe something that resonates with you from our experience if you don't feel comfortable yourself addressing this with you or with other people.
And the other thing I also want to say, the reason we're talking about this is also because how we're going to deal with it now is also an implication and the ramification on the children we're raising.
Yeah.
So if we can learn to embrace this, they're not going to see us with our struggles, and hopefully they won't be impacted with that when they become older, if they're little girls and they're going to become mothers in their future, that this is not going to be something hopefully that they will therefore be impacted on.
And I think
also
this is
our little boys. And
our little boys
look at how we inhabit our bodies and what a woman's body is capable of and what a woman's body looks like as it changes, even throughout a monthly cycle, let alone throughout a cycle of pregnancy and giving birth and postpartum. But even on a monthly cycle, what miracle is happening inside a woman's body on a 28-day rhythm.
And with that, hello, Ilena.
But yeah, thank you for jumping straight in, because we talk about all these topics from the women's perspective and how we as women struggle to get these things into the conversation and to be seen. But obviously, yes, we are not only raising our daughters, but there's people out there who are raising sons, including you, Ilena. So it is, if we want things to change, we don't have to put the work in only on our daughters, but we do massively have to work in the work with men and with the young boys, because we do live in a patriarchal society. So we do want to raise the next generation of men that are not putting out these weird body images of this is what a woman should look like to be attractive or whatever. So super, super important that you mentioned this, that we are also responsible of raising the next generation of men who have a different view on women's bodies.
Seriously. And the reason I bring that up is because, you know, when we began to talk about doing this episode together some weeks ago, I began to think, I wonder what the data is. Like maybe the data is really, really interesting to look at. And of course, data around women's health is pretty hard to come by. So I began to use Google and like what my suggested results would be and what have you. And I was horrified that when I put a search term in of academic data on women's body image postpartum, the suggested search terms out of a list of like 12 suggested search terms, guess how many were related to male searches about when a woman's body would return to normal or why a woman's body changed so much? Out of 12.
Yeah, 1.
6.
Okay.
6 of the suggested search terms were things that people had searched about their wife's postpartum bodies.
Oh, God.
So we can't have this conversation also without talking about that patriarchal influence and body ideals and beauty norms, because actually when you really begin to like look in the mirror about this, if you're willing to go that deep, because, you know, I do also want to say, like, obviously as a birth doula, you know, I talk about bodies a lot. A lot of my clients are worried about postpartum bounce back, as, you know, you know, and it, we'll come to shortly, like how this conversation went the last time and how triggering this was for me personally. But, you know, I can completely appreciate and completely honor with an open heart and no judgment that a lot of the time when we're navigating pregnancy and we're thinking about body image, we are thinking about that postpartum bounce back, because we have been bombarded for decades with images of beautiful Giselle Bundchen or, you know,
Heidi Klum,
Cindy Crawford,
like days after they've given birth. You know, think about the images of Diana versus, you know, Catherine Middleton on the stairs of the hospital in London, literally like hours after they've given birth. So we're like bombarded with those images, those aspirational images, and then we're going through the real life drudgery of birth. And, you know, we can't have this conversation. I'm a birth doula, so we can't have this conversation without talking about all of the different complex narratives that, you know, how we navigate birth and how that birth story impacts our body stories, our personal body narratives, and how that then influences our body image. But, it's normal that a starting point for considering body image might be, how am I going to get my body back when I give birth? And I was so triggered by this last time that we spoke about it in the context of our bigger conversation about an introduction to matrescence and the profound, metamorphosis and life passage and rite of passage that matrescence actually is. Because I feel like it's such a surface level idea when the profound nature of matrescence actually runs so much deeper and has such a much far-reaching impact and scope and reach than the way your body looks in your favorite pair of jeans 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years postpartum. And I feel like it's, the kind of birth worker in me, and also like this, beginning to enter into like the very, very first stages of perimenopause. So like a hormonal shift within me as well. And, the fierce feminist within me, the idea that the complexity and the beauty, the brutality, but the brutiful nature of our changing body image as we navigate matrescence, the idea that it's reduced to a postpartum bounce back just feels heartbreaking and soul-wrenching to me. So that's why I was so triggered last time. And I also was keen somewhere today to talk about like also the really like inner landscape shifting journey that I took with my own body image, like throughout the process of, the weeks, the months before I conceived my son, the joy that I experienced at my changing body in pregnancy. And, some of the interesting data that I think we have to mention is that whilst, we do see that people who already walk into pregnancy with what we would classify academically as a negative self-body image, often that deteriorates further in pregnancy and then almost definitively deteriorates further postpartum. We do see people who enter pregnancy with relative like body neutrality or even body positivity. We actually do see some really significant rises in the positive nature of people's body image during pregnancy, but that then it does, as Eva said, it does drop off and decline kind of tragically postpartum. And I really experienced this, like, I felt like a bloody goddess at different stages of my pregnancy. And then postpartum, honestly, there were so many other things going on for me postpartum. I just wasn't really thinking about my body until probably my son was like maybe 2. And then, thoughts about my body were very much related to oh my God, like how can my body endure 10 months of pregnancy in my case, because I gave birth at 42 plus 3, 36-hour birth journey, cesarean birth, healing from a cesarean birth, navigating breastfeeding, exclusive breastfeeding, going back to work as a birth doula, navigating these like significant, unpredictable periods of time where my son wasn't anywhere in my picture, but oxytocin levels were high, I was pumping, blah, blah, blah. I also went through a massive period of CPTSD. So mentally, like there was some really intense things going on. That meant that I also had very, very intense flashbacks that I'd never had before to childhood sexual abuse. And so the idea that my body was like processing these flashbacks, that the idea that my maiden body had withstood childhood sexual abuse, also sexual assault, sexual abuse in my teenage years, then gone through conceiving a baby, making a baby, growing a baby for all that time, navigating that massive, massive birth journey, navigating a birth that I asked for, that was a surgical birth, that was 180 degrees away from what I thought my birth journey was going to be, through that complex healing on 7 layers that my body had been cut through to allow me to birth my baby, then was healing from flashbacks, then was healing and navigating, nurturing this baby exclusively on the breast for many, many months. And then ultimately, 2 years, 7 months breastfeeding. I couldn't be anywhere but in absolute awe. And, it's going to make me emotional, but I was so grateful that finally I was absolutely at home in my skin, that I felt an embodied sense of what a miracle my body was and what a healing miracle my body was capable of, time and time and time again. And the idea then that like I should be fitting back into my favorite pair of jeans just felt completely superficial and inconsequential to me. But I can appreciate that in a society where women are so valued on almost impossible beauty norms, body norms, where the value of maidenhood is revered in those beauty norms, those body norms, and where mothers report feeling invisible, not just from a bodily perspective, but also an emotional perspective post-birth, because then we also encounter like the archetypes of the vessel, the womb, the seed, the maiden, the mother, the queen, the crone, all of those things changing all the time. The further we get away from maiden, the more invisible we are. So it's also really normal that psychologically we would still strive for a body that looks like a maiden, but has proven its capacity to be the perfect vessel, which therefore proves our worthiness of mother and of queen. And yet the idea that the body must still look like a maiden just kind of brings on the rage in me. Yeah. So that's why I was so triggered in our last conversation.
Yeah. And also when we talked about this earlier, Eva, before we started the recording, when we see the judgment of when do we think a mother has her shit together,
yes,
is when we see her and then we see her body, it's like, oh, she looks great. She must have her shit together. Like she's like that, like she is doing the right thing, which has nothing to do with parenting. Her, like we only see that she fits into these jeans again or whatever. Yeah. She looks great. And then we think, okay, she has it under control. Like she's doing it. She's thriving. Everything must be perfect because look at her. Like look at her body. Yeah. Not look. Not. I want to correct myself. Not look at her as a full, but look at her shell. Look at her body. Yes.
Yeah. But I think you touch upon a really important part of this, right? Because it is about control. So just diverting a second, like what's very interesting to pick apart are the statistics also on the prejudice that people in bigger bodies or fat bodies experience in things like job interviews. So there was some really interesting
I've written my bachelor thesis on this.
I know you have. So you can tell
Weight
me all
discrimination.
About this later. But what I found, what's always resonated with me, and I used to be a headhunter, so I used to look at data around this from a very different perspective in terms of like how I would advise people to dress and things on a job interview. But one of the perceptions of big people or fat people or obese people is that they are missing an element of control. They're not as in control as a slimmer person. Mm-hmm. So that's really interesting, right? Then that the idea would be her as mothers and, when we're looking around at our peers, that we would look at somebody whose postpartum body has bounced back and is slim and she's put together, that we would think, she's got her shit together. She's got it under control.
Yes.
Right? That, and the irony, of course, is that birth, the epitome of the experience of, or the foundational experience, let's say, of matrescence, birth requires that we completely surrender to zero control, right? That we unravel all of that conditioning, that we unravel all of those ideas about what our body's capable of, what our body's made for, blah, 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 that we actually access the surrender, a level of surrender in our soul, in our being, in the depth of ourselves, that otherwise we only encounter in death. Like that, it's that significant of a threshold experience. And then within weeks, days, hours, I don't know, months of giving birth, we're looking for signs that somebody's got that control back. Yeah. And that the symbol of that is a put together snatched body.
You got your shit together.
How insane, right? How insane.
I have to say, from my own experience, so I never got back to my pre-pregnancy body, I guess is how it's called. But I did drop quite a lot of weight and I was back in my pre-pregnancy jeans like within, I think it was 3 weeks or something mad. And I was shocked because I was kind of like, wow, look at this. Like I fit. But I was breastfeeding as well, or pumping, should I say, because struggling with breastfeeding. But I was in that realm of trying to feed my child. So I was having to pump every 3 hours for months. I was sleep deprived. My body, it was delusional, the experience I was going through. And many mothers go through this. And I want people to know this is what many of us go through. And we put ourselves through this because we feel like we have to. But the thing was, when your body's creating the milk, this raging hunger of I'll take anything, and you're going to eat anything and everything. I think I've spoken about it before. Like there was some mother in Harlem make these macaroons and she was delivering them like on Tuesdays into Amsterdam during COVID times. And they had this stick with a little hook at the end of it where they hung your bag, and then they it was COVID appreciation distance, and they would like knock at your door, then run back, hold the stick out so you could take your bag off the stick. And I would sit there and I would just devour these macaroons at like 3 a.m. in the morning, kind of like, oh, like this is what I deserve because this is what I need. Or I could have just eaten anything and everything, like beschuit and muisjes. Like I just ate them all the time. So I was going through this whole thing. And the thing is, everyone that knew that I was breastfeeding were like, yeah, but that's okay. You can do that. This is what you need to do. And it was the first time I felt like, I'm allowed to be in this. And I was like, okay, so I'm allowed to be eating and bigger and growing bigger with all of this consumption as well. So I was going through that and I was hitting it. And the thing was, my commitment was 1 year. That was my 100% goal, was to try and reach 1 year, because my whole breastfeeding, pumping was a massive struggle and it was a detriment to mental health. I mean, that alone is a whole other episode or series. So when I reached the 1 year and I cut off and I was like, right, I've stopped, I've winded down, I've done everything I could. The weight never left. The appetite never left. And I thought, oh, but I'm meant to. Like I'm now, when is this body gonna I finished breastfeeding, so now my body's going to stop, revert, and go back to, and that's 3 years ago now. And I'm like, yeah, hello, like knocking on the wall of fat, like, hello, when's this going to happen? And it's that thing that now I feel then trapped, because I'm still in the exhaustion. You've still got the sleepless nights or the sick child or the 101 things of motherhood that we have, or parenthood. And it's just that thing that I'm like, this is why this episode is very important, is because we're all going to have different aspects coming in here. And this was mine, was I was allowed to be larger. I was allowed to eat and I was allowed to do anything because I was supplying milk to a child. I was supplying the nutrients to my child. But after that, it was like a switch of, yeah, but you should stop eating bread. Or did you get out for a walk? Or maybe you shouldn't eat anything after dinner. And there was these little hints and suggestions. And I spoke to my house arts, and there was all of these shitty, non-helpful comments from people. Yeah. And it was a case of, it wasn't a passive aggressive thing. Of course, they're trying to be helpful, but it was just that thing of, they supported me in that 1 year because I was feeding a child. And now after, I'm caring for the child. I'm up late at night. I'm not sleeping some nights. I'm doing everything. And now I'm not allowed. Yeah. And I was just like, whoa, like I'm still doing my job. But now, obviously I'm not feeding it, so I don't need everything. But like, I'm just so sleep deprived and I'm just struggling. I'm just making it. Yes. But now, because my body still looks like this, I don't have the excuse, I guess it's what it's called.
Yeah. And isn't that hard to confront, that we're so indoctrinated into the idea that we need an excuse for our bodies to be bigger? Like, the irony of that is also, when you give birth, so when you're pregnant at multiple stages, especially in the last trimester of pregnancy, your body is flooded with a hormone called relaxin, which literally helps the ligaments and the joints to relax and to open. And relaxin is pretty much almost single-handedly, right, responsible for allowing the pelvis to really open up and allow a human being to come through it. Now, those doses of relaxin literally mean that some people will never fit into the same size shoes again for the rest of their lives, because their skeleton has widened and changed and does not revert. You wouldn't think it, right? If we're thinking, oh my gosh, I had an excuse to be bigger and now I don't have that excuse anymore. You're not going to be able to change the width of your shoes, the width of your feet in your shoes. You're not going to be able to change the width of your hands. My hands look different since I became a parent. I see the width in my hands rather than in my feet. My feet, yeah, I mean, some days they're still swollen, but that's a whole other story. So that whole idea that value lies in being small, it's hard. I mean, I find it personally hard as a bigger woman and as a woman whose weight has yo-yoed my whole life, since I was a child. And, now for me, it's very, very clear why my weight yo-yoed as a child. And, I was experiencing things as a child that I didn't tell anybody about until I was almost 30. But simultaneously to that, as my body was gaining weight, then rapidly losing weight, my mum was having me on diet since I was like 6.
I'm just quickly Googling about like countries celebrating female obesity, like larger women, as it were. And obviously it's down to the fact that if you're obese, it means you're wealthy because you can afford to eat. Yeah. And that's all that it really is.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the other things that is so fascinating to me is the kind of the weird contradictions that we face as women in modern society and what we're absorbing now. So whereas we talked about like Giselle Bündchen and Heidi Klum, we are, thinking back to them as significant influences on our conditioning and our idea of what body ideals look like. But now we're also having a generation of women who are experiencing a huge saturation of the idea of body positivity. And body positivity has quickly become a celebration of sometimes unhealthy lifestyles. So it's gone kind of away from simply like body positivity, body appreciation of body functionality, which we'll definitely circle back to because it's a key component of some of the most interesting and actually actionable research about how to improve your body image. But it's gone into almost sometimes encouraging lifestyles which are unhealthy. And then there is this like vilification of the body positivity movement as encouraging unhealthful ideals. So wherever you turn, we know now categorically that, the kind of waif-like heroin chic images that we were bombarded with in the 90s and the early 2000s, we know how harmful, how unhealthy those people were. So it's a lot less common to strive for that kind of heroin chic look. But then we are still experiencing, pressure to look like Kim Kardashian with a waist that is literally like, I think it's been proven, right, to be unattainable for 99.5% of people. And then we're like, but be positive about your body, but not too positive about your body because we don't want you to be lazy. We don't want you to be obese. So it's like there's all these conflicting ideals. And then coming back to the thing that I think is actually the most actionable and the most important, you also then, in that cacophony of noise, somehow have to look in the mirror or spend quiet time with yourself and examine all the things in your lived life that have informed your body narrative. And, I'm saying body narrative rather than your body positive story or your body image or your body neutral story, because in my experience of working with, at this stage, like thousands of women, body image does fluctuate. It's very, very, very rare to meet somebody who has a consistently positive or a consistently negative body image. It fluctuates. As we do, as our inner tides do, as we do as women. Yeah. I notice I'm really like, there are so many things that I'd love to talk about here. And I'm worried that it's going to go it's going to like loop and loop around so many different things. I'm hoping it's going to be possible to follow it.
And I think we have so many different, while you were talking, I got so many ideas about all the different points. And one that I want to circle back to what you said in the beginning of how our body image changes over pregnancy and how we feel good and then we feel bad, and how also this is the image of your body is impacted on how you got pregnant. So how your whole falling pregnancy journey was. Like if you had an easy time and nothing was struggling, you fell pregnant, that's it, you go through it and all that. But there is a lot of people who have a hard time getting pregnant and then it's resenting their body. Like, why isn't my body capable of doing this? And then IVF. And then it's like this whole thing of, okay, IVF. And then I'm thankful for my body. It's like this whole bouncing back of, am I grateful for my body or am I tormenting it? Am I not liking it? And I think this has also a huge impact on how you view your body. Or if you have a child who maybe has a disability or your child has some sort of not being in the norm, and then you think, oh, my body isn't capable of producing whatever life I am at. Like this whole, all these different layers of how you felt pregnant, how your pregnancy went, what your child, like what's the condition with the child, all these things have such a big impact on on you, how you feel home in your body, and everyone has a different story as well. And then also what I wanted to tap into was the whole thing of body positivity also then sometimes fell into the whole thing of you have to love everything about your body. And if you don't love everything about your body, you're not doing it right. And this has also become a little toxic at some points where it's like, no, I don't have to fucking love everything about my body. I have to be okay with it. And I have the right to not torment and torture myself over these things, but I don't have to accept and love everything about it. Like, how should I? There is nothing in life that 100% I love all the time in every stage. So why should this be with my body when my body is going through all these changes and it's not a thing that is petrified and doesn't change and I just have to change my view on it? Like, no, my body is changing, so is my view and my feeling towards my body changing. And then also coming back to the whole thing, then what you said of, oh, why do you choose to be a bigger person? Especially when we bring in, this is a whole different conversation, but with society now, we have Ozempic, we have all these things that help us. And then I'm just a little, worried about the whole direction that we're going into of, I don't want the conversation in 5 or 10 or 15 years to be like, well, why are you big? Like, what's the reason? Are you okay? Like, is there anything we can do? Because here, there's 10 pills, there's 10 injections. Like, are you okay? Like, can we do anything for you? Like this whole thing of, we choose, not everyone chooses to be a certain body image. Not everyone, also not everyone's body is naturally designed to be. We all have different stages. And this is also one very big thing that I have come to realize, that my body is just built a certain way, that I have like a natural weight that my body thrives for, and I have a natural, like my body is built in a way that will never be fitting into a size 0 or a size 2 or whatever, because this is just not how my body is built, period. And I can do whatever I want with it. It's not gonna go there. So also accepting the different body types, but natural.
And also, so I mean, there's two things I want to circle back to. I think it's a beautiful point that you made about like how you fall pregnant and what a fertility journey looks like, what a journey of conception looks like, and the impact that has. I really want to talk about the impact that an experience of birth can have. I want to talk also about like the impact of birth trauma and the resulting narratives that can occur in a medical setting, particularly. You know, we've not even talked, for example, about, ridiculous terms like an incompetent cervix or ineffective contractions. But, when we talk about health and we talk about bodies and like where we're headed in health, it's catastrophic to me that there's been this dearth of research into women's health, but we do see that changing. And then we see new pictures emerging. So, for example, last week I was watching the Huberman Lab, which I absolutely love for database stuff all around the body and biology and biohacking that actually works. He really makes a very, very good point of being as balanced as possible between research and data that is about men and research and data that's about women. women. And last week, there was an interview with a woman's health expert, Dr. Stacey something, and she was talking about like intermittent fasting and how actually intermittent fasting for, we see it, and it's been said by so many wonderful academic doctors, women's bodies are not little men. Women's bodies are not little men. There are fundamental differences in the way that our bodies and our metabolisms function in relation to those of men. And that has to be so. Our bodies are designed to have the capacity to conceive, to grow, to birth, and then to feed an entire other human being. So literally, all of the ways that we metabolize fat, all of the ways that our metabolism changes from week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4 of our cycles, we cannot fast in the same way that men can. It is harmful at certain stages of our monthly cycles for us to fast and for us to move our bodies more than a little gentle walk in a fasted state. So a fasted state for a woman, she gives a wonderful protocol for working out and in a fasted state. And not that I'm recommending this in any way, shape or form for anybody who's postpartum or, at least 4 years postpartum. But, she's saying a woman's fasted state basically means, a double espresso with a scoop of protein powder and about 30 grams of carbohydrate. That is a fasted state for a woman that is effective, and that doesn't mean that the hypothalamus goes into absolute panic about being in starvation mode. But for men, that would be a completely different signal for the body. That is absolutely not a fasted state for a man. And so, what you mentioned about Ozempic, who knows how much research has been done with Ozempic and monthly cycles? Who knows how much? Yeah.
Making a wild guess here.
Yeah.
But
who
are the people who take it? Who are the 95 or whatever percent of people who take it? It's not people with a penis.
Is not people with a penis.
But it is a diabetic. We do have to acknowledge that this is an actual diabetic medicine. So it is actually being shared by both male and female. But the whole thing is, yes, lately in the last few years, Ozempic, Mounjaro, Wegovy, and all the rest of it have come out as they have an appetite suppressant element to it, which is being sold. And the markup is anywhere from, I think it's 400% to God knows what. In America, I know it's 1,000 or it's 10 times the price of what it costs. And there is a shortage. And at the end of the day, this is a diabetic medicine. So this should actually be left for the diabetic people who actually need this, not for people who are looking for a quick shot. And it's not a quick shot, by the way, because you are starving your body. But I think the average is like 2 to 3 kilos a month was the weight loss they predicted. So when you see people, they've probably been on it for like 6 to 12 months or something like that by the time you actually see them.
30 kilos within the first year. And then with the other ones, it's between 7 and 8 kilos per year. There's a big difference. But anyway, we don't want to advertise for that. But
no, we don't.
It's like, no, but I do want to, I just want to address this topic because I can definitely see how a lot of women who are just so desperate and are just so not in tune with them,
don't feel themselves.
Like, and it's like, what? Like, I don't blame anyone who says, no, give it to me, please. I just need to get into a state back where I can somewhat be at home in my body again. So it's there, but I think the awareness also needs to be there with it.
And it's also, it's like you said, it's everything you said. Plus it's also the fact that I don't have time to go to the gym to work out and all the rest of it. I just take this injection and I don't need that extra 2 hours every couple of days to go to do the workout. Yeah. Therefore, I'm saving myself money. That's also the big element on this is like, because I personally know that like, I'm really bad with time management. So that's where I am at. And I can definitely see the attraction of it.
For sure. And again, I do want to emphasize, I genuinely do not have any judgment about anybody's stance in their body image, whether it's permanent or fluctuating, or meaning that they're reaching for Ozempic, or meaning that they have abandoned the idea that they'll ever exercise again. I cannot judge it because I've experienced so many different highs and lows with it myself. But, again, if I think about what this means to me, this notion of body image and this notion of like body narrative, my question about things like these weight loss injections is also like, okay, but how do these people, like, what is changing in their body narrative when they attribute their positive body image shift or their body value or body, the projected image of their body in the outside world, when they attribute that to a drug?
Yeah. And also I want to point out here that, and this is also a conversation that I think should be more of a conversation, is that when we say bounce back or go back or whatever, we only talk about the weight and we only talk about that, but we don't talk about, okay, can we please address incontinence? Can we please address not having stomach muscles? Therefore, you have fucking back pain all the time. Like, can we address all these body things, body functions that we need to? I wish I would be bouncing back to my holding my pee in before I was pregnant. Yes. I have bounced back into my jeans, but I have not bounced back into holding my pee in for several hours and running down the stairs. So just having that conversation. And I mean, when we talk about birth, we talk about tearing, cutting, all the things that we know are happening. And then the only most important thing is that we lose that fucking weight. No. How can we change the conversation back to how can we get your body healthy, meaning not hurting, not tearing, not leaking, not all these things? How can we strengthen your pelvic floor again? How can we strengthen your muscles? Maybe you, because of this hormone, I mean, breastfeeding, this prolactin hormone, I've had pain getting up, standing up from my chair. I couldn't walk for the first 5 or 10 meters because like everything was just so loose and hurting. And can we address these things? How can I get strong? How can we get the skeleton back together? How can we get the muscles back together? How can we bounce back to that body instead of the fat? Like,
instead of bounce back though, can we bounce forward to this body instead? Like, I mean, reality is we're never going to bounce back. So let's bounce forward and go through it.
That's true. Yes.
I do want to say that. I do want to say that in one of the researches that I was reading, they were really specifically focusing on like, let's create programs which help improve mothers' body image in particular, as this is going to have the benefit of enhancing the home body image environment, which might reduce the risk of the next generation of children developing body image concerns to the extent that we are in today. Because this really, the research indicates that all women are vulnerable to the body image concerns, but women with preschool children, so that's 0 to 5, had lower levels of self-objectification, body image, and dietary restraint. So there is this need that we address it, which we are now having this conversation. We're acknowledging it. So it's a case of, okay, I know when I'm going to be negative with myself. I know that this is normal because exactly like Ilena said, in our monthly cycle, we go through it and I notice it very clearly. By week 1, I'm looking at myself going, oh, I don't look too bad. By week 3, I'm like, I hate myself. Oh my God, what is this? Like by week 4, I'm covering the mirrors. Like, I'm just like, I can't even look at myself. We go through these cycles. And the thing is, it's a case of if you accept, then hopefully that will help promote better self-care, self-nourishment, self-love, and everything else that comes with it. But in the negative phase, you'll never move forward. You'll always be stuck. And so the thing is, these conversations are really to be like, look, we're all going through it. I think we've all admitted it now. Like, we've all gone through it. Anyone listening, I hope you're going to feel heard, seen, or you can also maybe raise your hand up while you're listening to this. Maybe no one else is looking at you. But I really just hope that this is like, I don't know if it's the start, I don't know if it's part, or I don't know if what this conversation leads to, but it's just a case of, hopefully this is just raising awareness and acknowledgement to say there's so many elements to this self-body image in postpartum. We'll never go back. Just like we discussed earlier on, where Maren had spoken about the Matrescence episode with Ilena back in April, where in her head it was, when you're 18, you'll never go back to your body of 10.
No.
And that's the thing that we really need to just keep in mind and be so considerate to ourselves. Because we are so focused on gentle parenting our children to go, you're just a young child, like you don't understand this. And we're trying to give them as much grace in this aspect of saying, it's tough. And you've had a lot to do today, and we're giving them so much grace, and it's so hard on us. But when we come to a female postpartum body, I think we also need to have that self-compassion, and self-compassion is very hard to have when your mind is busy, like Ilena said, like you've like 17 tabs open, you know, you've got a puppy in your corner, you've got a cat taunting the dog, you've got your son on camp, you know what I mean? There's so many things in your head going on that stopping and giving yourself that moment to actually be self-compassionate and to have a self-check-in, I think is very important. I think it's one of the most crucial things was your journaling and exercise as well, is writing things down and being connected to yourself. I think that's one of the most powerful things I've experienced in motherhood. Prior to that, I did try journaling and, you know, ifs and whats and buts. But in parenthood, in motherhood, sitting down, I have a special book up there that I sit down with my book and I write down what's happening, because there's too much to process.
There is so much to process. And I mean, you know, this is also why I'm like, for the last, I think now 6 years, I've been like going back and forward, like, editing what a journey of matrescence coaching in a group setting would look like and what we would cover. And I, you know, with your body image, you know, what I also find super fascinating, and I remember about 6 months after I really began to attribute some time to reflect on my body image and my changing body, and I was a little bit more focused on that. About 6 months into that, I remember some, I don't know, Facebook memory came up and some images of me at that stage then from like 7 years before, when I'd been at a wedding. And I remember when I first saw those images that somebody had taken of me, and I was like ripping apart like my shoulders. I was like, God, I wish I'd just been at a slightly different angle so you could really see my bicep, or like really see the definition in my collarbones. And so when I looked at them 7 years later, when I was just beginning to get to this stage of, okay, how do I build in more movement? How do I build in more vegetables? How do I move my body with pleasure? How do I begin to enjoy sensuality and pleasure in my body now that it's, you know, almost 3 years postpartum? Then I'm looking at this photo from like 7 years prior, and I'm like, God, she was so stunning, and she had no idea. And that is another element of body image, that then you're having this kind of nostalgic grief for who you were without the compassion that hopefully motherhood leads you towards. And that's another component that can come up. And, you know, again, like the research shows us specifically that, you know, elements like that can be really complex for people who've experienced eating disorders in their 20s, in their teenage years. And there are people who experience sudden bounces back to that with pregorexia, for example, anorexia whilst pregnant, partly because they are experiencing this like backward glancing grief for what they went through when their body actually was so much more beautiful than they realized. So that is another component of body image within the context of the evolution, that self-growth, reflection, metamorphosis of matrescence that is occurring within body image too, that it can really be that. And sometimes that can also be an interesting journaling exercise to imagine, okay, flash forward, I'm now 49, or I'm now 20 years time, I'm now 59. What would I want to be saying to this body of mine that I'm inhabiting now? What will I be remembering about my body now at 39, when I'm 49, when I'm 59? And you mentioned there about self-compassion. We've talked a little bit about body positivity. You know, the research does show us conclusively that aiming towards body neutrality by focusing on body functionality is really the most evidence-based way to improve your body image, rather than going from maybe a place of, you know, contempt towards the self, or hopefully not, but possibly self-loathing, to this aspirational idea of body positivity. And, Maren, I love the way you put it. Like, I should love every single part of myself. How unrealistic is that? How unrealistic.
I just want to say, like, for an example of body positivity is something like, I love my legs, my cellulite and everything. They are beautiful. And body neutrality is actually, I love my legs because they help me run. Just to give some people an example of what that is.
Yeah. Exactly. And again, speaking about birth, speaking about postpartum, maybe even speaking about fertility. You know, I know that there are people who are hoping to become parents who are also listening to this podcast. You know, that might look like even beyond just the affirmation of, you know, what you're positively recognizing. Sometimes in affirmation work with clients, I really talk about an affirmation that really includes the current state of play. So that might be, even though every month I'm struggling with this negative pregnancy test at the moment, I'm really grateful that my womb is able to menstruate. And I'm really grateful that I do notice a hormonal shift throughout the months that does show me my body's trying to do its best by me.
Yeah.
That it can, how you can take it, because the academic research on body neutrality and body functionality, I think it's wonderful, it's factual, it's evidence-based, but I do think we do have little tweaks that we can make to really add in more compassion and to really add in that honest starting point of acknowledgement of where we stand. So postpartum and affirmation might look like, even though I hate the smell of my sweat, I am grateful for the fact that my lymph is running alongside my breasts that are producing milk to nurture this baby. And I'm going to give myself grace as I wash my armpits for a second time today, because I know that everything within me, deep within me, is changing and shifting and nurturing this baby and helping this baby grow.
I think it's very beautiful. And this is an episode with Ilena. So here I am crying.
We all got to have our tissues.
It really, what you just said, and I want to repeat this. So if anyone out there listening and it was a lot of stuff that we talked about, lots of really things that hit home. But one thing, Ilena, you just said, and that really just opened up the floods with me, was your body, it's doing its best. Your body is doing its best. And this is really the mindset of, let's let go of me against my body, and the body is not doing it right, and it's just like, I have to fight this body, I have to fight against this invisible thing, and I'm just not getting a hold of it. And really coming back to, and this is also then tapping into the thing that you said, Eva, with the compassion that we have towards our children, where we always think they're doing their best. They're trying their best to do this. They're never mean. They're never like trying to be extra difficult. Same with your body. Your body always tries to do its best. It's not fighting against you. And really seeing this. And and sometimes the body is screaming for help. Sometimes the body is screaming for that. Sometimes the body needs that. So listening to this, listening to your body, getting more in tune with it, to help it do its best job possible, which is keeping you alive, living your life, experiencing it, functioning, making you able to walk to the daycare, to pick up your child, to do all the living, to be. And that was just, really, really beautiful. And your body, it's doing its best, period.
On that, I'd really like to read a little poem that is by somebody called Holly Holden, who is a mother of two, and she does amazing work in a very humble, very lovely, very human way. And then she wrote this poem in 2016 and it went viral. And it stays with me regularly in the shower. I think about this poem. Today, I asked my body what she needed, which is a big deal considering my journey of not really asking that much. I thought she might need more water or protein or greens or yoga or supplements or movement. But as I stood in the shower, reflecting on her stretch marks, her roundness where I would like flatness, her softness where I would like firmness, all those conditioned wishes that form a bundle of never quite rightness, she whispered very gently, could you just love me like this?
Here's a running. Yes.
I know, I can see you.
It's such a beautiful one. And it is exactly that. The body is doing its best. Always. We are hardwired to strive to heal. We are like self-healing machines. So any moment that you can give yourself to acknowledge what your body's been through, what it's holding, what it's resisting, what it's allowing, what it's tolerating, with that in mind, it's doing its best. It's doing its best. And I do have permission to love my body just like this here today. I think that is a good starting point.
Yeah. And I think that's also a great way to end this. I just wanted to also add that, like, normally with Ilena, she also now brings poetry to us, but normally she also has previously brought journaling to us. So tomorrow we're actually going to do an abbreviated journaling exercise. So do join us tomorrow for an extra bonus episode, because it is paramount as an addition to this specific topic of matrescence and body self-image.
Maybe it would be also really nice for people to share, after they've listened to this episode, for them to share their body affirmations, and we can share them on Instagram stories.
Yeah. So reach out to us. You can find us Damn Parenting Podcast on Instagram. And if you have a friend who is going through a hard time with their body and is really struggling, or if you want to forward this to someone to make them understand what you are going through, share this episode with anyone who needs to hear that their body is doing their best today and what they need to hear to be a little bit more at peace with their body. And yeah, just be in it, make it a home again for you. It's been a home for your baby. So really make it a home for your soul again, and what you can do to help yourself with that you can be coming more in tune with your mind and your body, and you're working as a team together. So for anyone who needs to hear this, forward this episode to them, and we will pick this topic up for sure again, because I've just, throughout this whole hour that we've been talking now, there's 10 different topics that I would want to dive deeper into. So maybe we're going to make this a little series or whatever. But for now, thank you so much for listening in. And thank you so much for, following us on our thoughts with this. And hopefully you can be very gentle with your body today, and we'll hear you next time.
Thank you. Bye.